Well, students, today our topic is dimensions of culture and role of education towards culture. While going through this topic, we will come to know about concept of culture, meaning of culture, characteristics of culture, dimensions of culture, and finally its relationship with education. Culture is one of the most important concepts in social science. The study of human society immediately and necessarily leads us to the study of its culture. Culture, which is the funded capital of civilization, is the most important subsystem of the social system and has greatest affinity with education, which again is the most crucial subsystem of the social system. The study of culture was first used by the pioneer English anthropologist Edward B. Taylor in 1871. Taylor said that culture is the complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, morals, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of the society. The study of culture has complex relationships that provide the societal information in the given society. This is the reason why Taylor explained it as complex whole, as it provides the multi-dimensional societal factors that is affected by the inter and intra relationships of man in the social environment. Culture consists of the beliefs, behavior, objects, and other characteristics common to the members of a particular group or society. Through culture, people and groups define themselves, conform to society's shared values, and contribute to society. Culture distinguishes human beings from animals, refers to music, dance, literature, architecture, and other creative activities. Tradition and heritage denote civilization, indicates the commonly shared ideas and practices of a group of people. Popularly speaking, being cultured means being well educated, knowledgeable of the acts, stylish and well-mannered. Sociologists define society as the people who interact in such a way as to share a common culture. Culture and society are intricately related. A culture consists of the objects of a society, whereas a society consists of the people who share a common culture. Culture is thus defined as the shared patterns of behaviors and interaction, cognitive constructs, and affective understanding that are learned through a process of socialization. In other words, culture is the result of what we learn as an individual and as a member of society. It is a way of life, mode of thinking, acting, and feeling. The concept of culture revolves in the human society on its beliefs, acts, morals, customs, and other capabilities such as values, norms, traditions, mores, folkways, languages, race, ethnicity, technology, faiths, and laws. These social variables provide the unique definition of culture for the understanding and adjustment of the life in a given social condition. Tradition. Tradition as a general term refers to the customs, rituals, beliefs, folklore, habits in a given group. Folkways. Folkways are not considered as morally consequential as taboos. Folkways are considered as behavioral patterns of a particular society that is repetitive and organized. In other words, folkways are the expected behavior being practiced in certain ethnic groups. They provide us the set of expected behavior to follow within the customs and habits in the ethnic group. Beliefs. Beliefs are the ideas, viewpoints, attitudes of the particular group of society. They consist of fables, proverbs, myths, superstitions, education, etc. that influence the ideas, values, emotions, and perceptions. Beliefs assume that a proposition, statement, description of fact is true in nature. These acceptances were influenced by the external authorities such as government, religion, or science rather than proven true from the individual's direct experience. Values. Values serve as guidelines for social living. Culturally, it can be defined as standards of desirability, goodness, and beauty. Values are the common ethical standards in a civilized society wherein group members have the ability to distinguish what is right or wrong. These are approved sets of action to follow part of social life, and violation of this act may require sanctions and punishments within the family or institutions of society. Norms. Norms are considered as rules and expectations eventually set by a particular society that serves as guides to the behaviors of its members. Norms are questionable standards of what society considers as good and proper for social behavior. It is reinforced by sanctions in the forms of rewards and punishments. Mores. Mores are norms that define the standards of moral behavior within a culture. Mores are the long established customs and traditions that have bearing in moral and ethical values of the society. They are the accepted customs of the society. A common example is the unacceptability to some people that couples give birth to a child without wedlock. Laws. Laws are norms that are clearly defined and upheld by a culture's governing body. Laws are the rules, regulations, and guiding policies of societal institutions. The violation of the laws means sanction and punishment for some wrongful acts by the individual. Generally, it is the way of life that would focus how people think, act, and produce materials in its natural habitat. On the other hand, the sense of culture reflects the human products such as audiovisual arts and literacy arts that revolved in the part of history and civilization of the ethnic society. Culture affects every aspect of daily life, how we think and feel, how we learn and teach, or what we consider to be beautiful or ugly. However, most people are unaware of their own culture until they experience another. Culture therefore is moral, intellectual and spiritual discipline for advancement in accordance with the norms and values based on accumulated heritage. Culture is thus a collective heritage learned by individuals and passed from one generation to another generation. The individual receives culture as part of social heritage and in turn may reshape the culture and introduce changes which then become part of the heritage of succeeding generation. Thus, culture understood as the breadth of human practice affects our society at nearly every level, including politics, sexuality, gender, and identity. Culture is the valuable contribution of our ancestors saved up and invested as better ways of living. In short, culture is formed through social practice and therefore has a nearly totalizing effect upon society. Now friends, let us discuss characteristics of culture. Culture is a way of life. Culture means simply the way of life of people or their design for living. A culture is historically derived system of explicit and implicit designs for living which ends to be shared by all or specially designed members of a group. Culture is abstract. Culture exists in the minds or habits of the members of society. Culture is the shared ways of thinking and doing. In other words, we cannot see culture as such, we can only see human behavior. This behavior occurs in regular pattern, fashion, and it is called culture. Culture is transmittive. Culture can be transmitted from one generation to another. Language is the main vehicle of culture. Language in different forms make it possible for the present generation to understand the achievement of earlier generations. Transmission of culture may take place by imitation as well as by instruction. Culture is social. Culture is social, not individual heritage. Culture does not exist in isolation. It develops through social interaction. Man becomes man only among men. The cultural heritage brings stability in society. Culture is responsive. Culture is responsive to changing conditions of a physical world. It intervenes in the dangers and natural calamities. Example, our house is responsible to give us shelter and safety from storm and heavy rains. Now, my dear students, let us go through the dimensions of culture. Material dimension, non-material dimension. Material dimension. The term material culture is often used by the archaeologists as a non-specific way to refer to the artifacts and other concrete things left by past cultures. An archaeologist can be described as a person who studies the material culture of a past society. Material culture refers to the physical objects, resources, and spaces that people use to define their culture. This includes homes, books, neighborhood, schools, temples, mosques, factories, means of production goods, etc. All of these physical aspects of a culture help to define its members, behaviors, and perception. An object only becomes part of culture after meanings have been given to it. Material culture renders culture manifest in physical, palpable, measurable form. A material culture places emphasis on objects, material accomplishment, the acquisition of material wealth, skill and productivity in arts and crafts, technology, fine buildings, and displays of material prosperity. In short, material culture consists of man-made objects such as tools, implement, furniture, automobiles, buildings, roads and bridges, and in fact the physical substances which have been changed and used by man. It is concerned with external, mechanical, and utilitarian objects. Non-material dimension. Non-material culture includes creations and abstract ideas that are not embodied in physical objects. In other words, any intangible products created and shared between the members of a culture over time are aspects of their non-material culture. Non-material culture consists of the words the people use or the language they speak, the beliefs they hold, values and virtues they cherish, habits they follow, ritual and practices that they do, and the ceremonies they observe. It also includes our customs and tastes, attitudes and outlook. In brief, our ways of acting, feeling and thinking. Cognitive dimension. In cognitive dimensions, sociologists refer to the mental aspect of culture. The invention and discoveries in the material dimensions of culture stems from the cognitive aspect. Normative dimensions. It is based on norms. Norm is a criteria of human behavior. Norms are unquestionable standard of what society consider as good and proper for social behavior. It tells us what people should do and not to do. A norm, by definition, implies a sense of obligation. It pays down a standard behavior which one ought to follow. Prescriptive norms. It tells us about things we should do. Prohibitive norms tells us about things we should not do. My dear students, let us go through the education and culture. To quote Mahatma Gandhi, I want the culture of other countries to blow through the windows of my house, but I do not want to be swept off my feet by any of them. There is a close relationship between culture and education. The culture of a society has its inevitable impact on its educational system. The educational system points to the various needs of the society concerned because it is towards the fulfillment of the same that education is organized. Education enables the individual to realize the qualities with which he is endowed, and on the other hand, it gives him the realization that all human beings share the common culture which contributes to the common good. Whatever we learn through education is immensely influenced by culture. Bartlett says that social tradition influences way of thinking, remembering, imagining, and doing creative things. Education, being the absorber and reflector of culture, is the best medium for the initiation of the rising generation into the cultural norms and processes of the society. An educational institution, being a controlled and rarefied environment, transmits and promotes culture in a systematic, concise, and deliberate manner. According to Edison, education, when it works on a noble mind, draws out to view every latent virtue and perfection. Education is the vital configuration of the social system, shaping the personality of younger generation, raising them from life and preparing them from the kind of society they live in and they should live in. Now, my dear students, let us know about the role of education towards culture. Conservative and transmittive role. In relation to culture, education indeed is a process of instilling in young people the traditionally inherited and contemporarily renewed values and beliefs which launch at the heart of cultures. This role of education aims at culture conservation. Sociologists commonly conceive the function of education as the transmission of culture from one generation to another. In modern societies, the school is the major institution devised by the adult generation for maintaining and perpetuating culture. The function of education is to transmit the social values and ideals to the young and capable members of society. Education is the series of cultural tradition, experiences, values and norms, new cultural patterns. The function of education is not associated with the transmission of culture, but it builds new cultural patterns. It brings changes in existing culture. These changes are necessitated due to cross culture of contacts or the building of new knowledge which makes the old patterns redundant. Promotion of culture. Education helps in the modification and promotion of culture. It also helps in the establishment of better society. Education culturizes individuals, modifies cultural processes by research and deeper investigation into all areas of human requirements. Continuity of culture. One more function of education is to maintain continuity of culture by handing down customs, tradition, experiences and values of society from one generation to another. Removing cultural lag. When material culture develops at a fast pace due to scientific and technological advancement, non-material culture consisting of ideas, values and norms lag behind. There is no harmony in between the two types of the culture. There is a clash of values as well as of ideologies. Education is the only means to bridge this culture lag by its activities and programmers of development. Education should be means to empower children and adults alike to become active participants in the transformation of their societies. Learning should also form the values, attitudes, beliefs and behaviors which enable individuals to learn to live together in a world characterized by pluralism. Education should treat human culture as a whole like a flower with different petals representing one cultural group. It should preach unity in diversity and not overemphasize diversity. Role of culture towards education. Culture strongly influences how an individual approaches education, and a society's culture determines how that society educates its citizens. A society devoid of culture or having no culture will have no definite educational organization. Hence, it may be safely asserted that the culture of a country has a very powerful impact on its education pattern by bringing appropriate culture into the school. Number of different purposes are served. A student learns about his heritage, his people and his community. This gives the student a sense of self-worth and a pride where he is and whom he belongs. Culture determines the content of education. It gives direction to individuals' learning. Whatever is taught in school or whatever is learned in school, consciously or unconsciously, is derived from total culture. Dr. Zakir Hussain says, the characteristic mark of an educated man should be a positive attitude towards the goods of culture, that is, towards the ultimate objective values. This means education produced a cultured man who will uphold the cherished values of the culture to which he belongs. Culture influences every aspect of education, like aims of education, curriculum, methods of teaching, textbooks, teacher, co-curricular activities, discipline, etc. In short, culture has significant implication for education. Brahmalt has rightly remarked, it is from the stuff of culture that education is directly created, and that gives to education not only its own tools and materials but its reason for existing at all. On the other hand, education weeds out the undesirable elements from society, thus purifies it. In doing so, education also provides alternatives to fill up the gaps. So, dear students, this was all about the culture and its relation with education. Thank you for today and see you again with the next topic.